What's good? How y'all doing this afternoon? Welcome back to the Dun's Favorite here on Forever I Love Atlanta Sports Podcast. It's your boy, the Dun. I'm here to talk about Terry Fontenot. I'm saying it wrong. Terry Fontenot. All right. I got on my partner in crime, Mad Mike from Mad Mike Sports AFN. How you doing, man?
Hey, man. I'm cool. I'm chilling. I'm feeling kind of. I don't even know what to say about this. I think this is like the hamburger. You know what I'm saying? The hamburger. We just stole Terry Fontenot away from the Saints. Like I'm feeling good about that, man. I think this is a well calculated, brilliant idea for Arthur Blake. For that purpose, we're gonna get to that purpose. But I feel like I think this is a good move, man. I really think this is a good move.
I agree. We've been talking about this for a long time. And we brought on no other than Ross Jackson from Canal Street Chronicles. How you doing, man? Let everybody know who you are, where they can find you.
Doing great, man. Hey, appreciate y'all having me on. We'll talk a little bit about this Terry Fontenot hire, but I agree with Mike. Y'all should feel very, very positive about this. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA, NOLA. You can check out the work over at Canal Street Chronicles as well as the daily work over at the Locked On Saints podcast. Glad to be able to come through today and help talk about this hire for y'all.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So, Terry Fontenot, all right, he's been with the organization for 16 years. All right, this is before Breeze was there. This is when y'all had Aaron Brooks as y'all quarterback. Y'all had Deuce McAllister as y'all running back. Y'all had I forgot the coach name.
Jim Haslett.
Y'all had Haslett as y'all quarterback. Man, as y'all head coach. Mm-hmm. So they tell me about the early beginning of Terry Fontenot with the organization.
Yeah, so he started off with the organization basically in a couple of different roles, but he's always been somebody that has had his hand in pro personnel, pro scouting. He's always sort of been in that range, in that level. And so that's really where he sort of made his footprint with this team, especially as of late and over the recent years. He has seen the worst of the franchise and the best of the franchise as well. He's been around for all of it. He's been a huge part of sort of the upswing here recently in terms of what the team has been able to do, particularly not even in terms of talking about what they do on the field, just talking about in terms of them being able to identify, recruit, and retain talent at the pro scouting level and at the pro personnel level.
Ooh. All right. So that's his expertise is the pro scouting, pro personnel. All right. So this is the Falcons issue for the most part. And yes, we have issues with evaluating talent on the pro scouting as well. We brought in guys like Terrell McClain.
Right.
You guys, man, you know what I'm talking about. We get these guys in here, man. They are absolutely trash. Look at Dante Fowler. We decided this man for $15 million. Mm-hmm. And this man have not produced at all, none this year.
Yeah. So, this is the Dante Fowler signing was one of the things that I pointed to and said, this is why Atlanta is hiring Terry Fontenot, or this is why Atlanta is pursuing Terry Fontenot. I wasn't early enough on it, but I know when they start, I wasn't as early as y'all on it, but when it started off towards you saw the talks and everything about, hey, Terry Fontenot is getting some traction in Atlanta, all this stuff. It made perfect sense because you look at some of these signings, and I would even say the acquisition of Todd Gurley kind of plays into that as well. Because Terry Fontenot, one of the other things that he's a part of, not that the signing of that Todd Gurley was bad, but just the contract and figuring out what the weight of that all was going to be. That's more of a Rams problem than it is a Falcons problem. Yeah. But it's those types of issues that you see around the league that Terry Fontenot helps the New Orleans Saints sort of avoid when it comes to figuring out people that are not only like going to produce on the field and that are going to fit the system. Like he has an idea of what the philosophy is for these players that are around the NFL and who's going to fit, but also contract negotiations, talks, the talks about the contract negotiations, getting all that stuff in place, the retention once those players get to the team. He's a big part of that as well in terms of that's why you don't see a lot of in-house free agents leave from New Orleans, with the exception of guys like maybe Tyler Davison, who was, an undrafted free agent. They didn't have the room for him, but he ended up with the Atlanta Falcons, for instance. He's a big part in that identification and that part of it as well. And then one of the other things that I'll mention too, that I think is important to the Atlanta Falcons as the build continues for Atlanta, because I always look at Atlanta as a team that's never rebuilding, but always kind of reloading. And Terry Fontenot is a big part of that when it comes to like that pro personnel look. And he's able to do that with not only free agency, but also trade acquisitions, waivers. And then he's the guy that brings folks in once they get drafted and they become a part of the system. He's a big part of that identification, role, fit, all of that other stuff.
All right, so pretty much to sum up, let me break this down for people who can't understand.
I know you were going, Doug.
Look, what he does, he look at players around the league, free agents or whatever. He look at what production and are they worth that amount of money? If not, they're not coming here. But if they are, then we'll bring them in.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's really good with all that. And he's just really great at understanding what types of players fit the team philosophy. And he's looking at that, the team philosophy in terms of how they fit on the field, but also how they fit in the locker room. Like, what are these guys in terms of culture? What are these guys in terms of their ability to work with the other players around, everything like that? Like you hear a lot about the New Orleans Saints team culture, and Terry Fontenot is a big part of maintaining that throughout the, once these players actually arrive in, the facility or in Metairie in New Orleans, however you want to look at it.
Okay. All right. Matt, Mike, you want to add to anything? Ask a question?
Would you say that Terry is a guy that I wouldn't necessarily say with the philosophy, but the Falcons have had a culture of not being a very tough type of organization, and they're not very physical. Guys don't tend to speak up. Is he one of those GM that goes for a certain mentality as far as like a defensive side, the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah. So this is where the kind of new widening his scope as a general manager is going to come into play. This is where some of the question marks are, because what Terry Fontenot is accustomed to is that somebody else sets the tone, somebody else sets the philosophy, and then he finds the players, the people, the staff, everything like that fits that. Okay. Now he has to widen his scope a little bit to where he's over pro personnel and he's working with the folks that are heads of that particular department. But he's also going to be working with the department that's taking care of, let's say, college scouting, for instance, the players that are coming into the NFL, which are usually split with NFL franchises. He's also going to be, concerned with player retention as a whole, contract negotiations to a greater extent. He'll have his hands deeper in that. He's learned from two of the best in Kai Harley and Mickey Loomis in terms of how to make these contracts work, ghost years, all that little like crazy stuff that the New Orleans Saints do, so that they continue to push off the cap explosion to year after year after year. And then he also has to do some of the more day-to-day things now too, training facilities, looking at overhauling and leading certain things in terms of renovations, like all those other sort of like day-to-day tasks that we don't think about. He now also has to open his scope to. So it depends on what the structure is for Atlanta. If the structure of the philosophy of the team is going to be dictated by the new head coach that comes in, then he's going to do a really great job at leading two departments, draft, or let me say college scouting and pro scouting, that are going to be able to identify the appropriate talent and the appropriate fits for that. If he's tasked with building the culture, then he's going to bring a lot of what you see in New Orleans with him, and then see exactly where the nuance is there in terms of what the Terry Fontenot style ends up being. But that would be a big question mark just in terms of what that looks like.
All right. Now, here's my other question. Yeah, here's my other question, because I really thought that y'all was willing to just not give up, but just allow Jeff Ireland to walk more so Terry Fontenot. Because I know Fontenot been there for a long time, and you just don't really just get rid of. I ain't get rid of him, but you just don't. You try to make him happy, keep him there. Because you see a lot of people, like a lot of scouters, national scouters, stay with teams for years, and like you got people there in New England. As a national scout, I've been working with Belichick and Parcells for years, but he's not going nowhere anytime soon. Right. But that's very similar to Terry Fontenot. And I was shocked that when we said that his name was on the docket to be interviewed, I'm like, oh man, I said like this could be better than Jeff Ireland, because I did a show on Jeff Ireland, a few weeks ago, because I thought Ireland was going to be more so coming here to be interviewed and possibly be the GM over Terry, but. I think this is a better, situation for us.
Yeah, I think so too. Here's what I'll say too when it comes down to Jeff Ireland and Terry Fontenot. Jeff Ireland has been there before. He has been a general manager before. Generally, it's hard, especially when you have a negative experience as a general manager, to erase teams' memories of that. And Jeff Ireland did not have a very successful tenure as a general manager. I believe it was in Miami, if I remember correctly. That did not go extremely well for him. So I think that it's harder to erase that. Terry Fontenot, instead, being a young up-and-comer that, was with the New Orleans Saints franchise for over 15 years. Like you mentioned, he's literally from Louisiana. He's from Lake Charles. Like, he's from Southwest Louisiana.
Yeah,
like he's, you know what I mean? Yeah, so he had like really strong ties with the organization, but there was a reason that they promoted him up to, instead of being a director of pro personnel, they promoted him up to assistant VP as well as assistant general manager of pro personnel. They were grooming him to be able to advance his career. And unfortunately for the Saints, that means two things. This is a guy that they believed in and they believed deserved a shot as a general manager in the NFL. So they promoted him in order to help build his resume to that level to where he would get that consideration, or to assist him in getting that situation. But also there was nowhere else to promote him aside from like retitling Mickey Loomis and then promoting him up to general manager and then promoting Terry Fontenot up to general manager. There was no real way to kind of leverage anything to say, no, stay here in New Orleans, if that makes sense. This is a great opportunity for Terry Fontenot. Everybody believes in him. And that became more paramount to the Saints, who already have probably a plan in place to replace him, because he's been there for 16 years, which means the rhythm, the cadence in terms of the way that they study, the way that they look at pro personnel, like the way that they look at these players, they've got somebody that's probably ready to come up from within the organization that knows that same system, that same situation pretty well. So they'll be fine, but it does hurt them. There's no doubt about that. It hurts New Orleans to lose Terry Fontenot, but I think that because you're talking about, players that are going to be professional guys that have been playing for, 7, 8, 9, 10 years versus the 3 to 4 year turnover of college scouting, it's a little bit more important to maintain consistency across college scouting than it is to maintain across pro scouting.
All right. I had a question from my co-host, King's Realm. He said he missed it, but he said, who has he drafted or has his hands on with drafting? I don't think he has dealt with anything. Have he dealt with anything with the draft? He doesn't deal with any of that selection process.
He helps once those players get drafted to get them into their fits, get them into the system. That's the next part that he does. But everything in terms of drafting and player acquisition in the draft is Jeff Ireland. That's all his stuff. Okay. But some of the players that you can point to for Terry Fontenot in terms of leading the charge on when it comes to signings, Emmanuel Sanders this past season, of course, Demario Davis recently, which was a huge signing. Huge signing for him. And then again, all of the player retention that they've been able to do in terms of keeping players in the building. Taysom Hill, David Onyemata, who was going to be a free agent last season, that they managed to re-sign on a very cheap 3-year deal. So a lot of that in terms of retaining the team and keeping consistency over this 2017 to 2020 period, he played a very large role in that.
All right, I'm gonna add to that. So he hasn't had any experience in the draft of college scouting. Do you think he'll probably bring a scouter from the Saints over to be the director of college scouting?
It's possible. It's possible. He could bring, oftentimes when you see people get hired as general managers, they bring scouts with them or they bring people in the system, and that's absolutely possible. Right. I don't think he'll bring Jeff Ireland with him, but he can bring,
We good. But you got a question for him?
He pretty much answered it. As far as, so basically what you're saying is just he's more so the cap guy to kind of bring in, to kind of manipulate the cap, bring in this guy, retain this guy, for the most part.
Yeah, I would put more focus on identification and retention. Those are kind of his biggest things. Okay. He does have some part in contract negotiations, but in terms of like manipulating cap and everything like that, that comes down to Mickey Loomis and Kai Hartley, who's the capologist in the room. That really comes down to them. But he does have obviously the experience of working with those two, which I think will benefit him in this position.
All right, David, you got your question out. So he asked about the cap, so he just answered your question. So, all right. So I want to address this question real quick. And I just want you to be honest. Like, I understand you're a Saints fan, and I know we don't like y'all don't like us. We just keep it 100.
I like y'all, but that's fine. That's fine.
Man, come on, man. Let's not be politically correct now.
Come on, man. Don't try to play that. Don't play that.
So, Matt Ryan. All right, this has been the huge topic for the past couple of years here in Atlanta. Matt Ryan, a lot of the fans saying that, and then you got people here that reports on the Falcons who, I'm gonna be honest, they'll do a good job. They said that we should move on from Matt Ryan, and they said, well, if we have a new GM in here, then we'll move on from him and draft a quarterback. Do you think Terry Fontenot would do something like that?
That to me is something that the general manager may take the lead, like a new general manager coming in. New general manager wants to walk in and trade the starting quarterback. That is not the first thing that a general manager wants to do. They don't, you know what I mean? Like you can look at the new general manager going in at in Detroit. Like homeboy doesn't want to be the dude that trades away Matt Stafford. You know what I'm saying? Like
especially a good quarterback. Matt Ryan is an elite quarterback. Like, why would you want to get rid of this guy?
Yeah. So it really comes down to the direction. I would look more to Arthur Blank in that situation. It's going to kind of come down to the direction that the team ownership wants to go in. And then after that, it comes down to the general manager to make that happen. So I don't think that any general manager is going to walk in and say, all right, time to, sell everything out and like fire sale everybody. Let's move Julio. Let's move Matt Ryan. Like that's not a great way to start off a situation. Most of the time you accept a job like the Atlanta Falcons job because they have those players, right? Because they have Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, things like that. So I don't know that there's going to really be a rush or a push from Terry Fontenot in particular to do that. But if it does come from ownership or elsewhere within the organization, that's the direction that they want to go, then it'll be up to him to make the best of that situation.
Good. That right there. We have been saying this for a long time. All right. Kingsville said since he doesn't really draft, are you worried about him in this year's draft?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest question, right? Is what is going to be the effect of widening his scope? And also because he comes from an organization that delegates those responsibilities, will he also delegate those responsibilities so that maybe what you simply see is a static return in terms of what the drafting has already been for Atlanta, which has been decent. Like, I don't think there's anything really to, there have been some, like maybe you'll see more mobility in the draft in terms of trading and things like that. Maybe he brings that philosophy with him. But I think for the most part, like there's not a ton that you have to really adjust about the Atlanta Falcons' ability to draft. Like they've been pretty steady there. So I think that for him, it's going to come down to whether or not he wants to delegate that to the people that are already there and already handling, and maybe he brings a little bit of a different approach or philosophy to it, or just a different system for identifying the talent, like maybe a different criteria. But in terms of the decisions that are made, I think you'll still see a pretty consistent rhythm in terms of what you see. I don't think you see a big shift.
I'm cutting this out. I'm cutting this out right here. You confirm everything we've been saying. Exactly. Like, people been saying, "Oh, GM, he gonna want to draft." I'm like, come on, we already got people here in places already scouting talent in college right now.
Yeah, like the general management position is one that can absolutely be one that walks in and absolutely like tears everything up and then reinstitutes a whole new thing. I'm not going to say that that's not possible, right? Obviously, that's possible, but for somebody that's coming in like that, and for somebody that's taking the job as a first-time general manager, he may make a different decision, which is to rely on the delegation that's already in place and then just introduce new criteria, introduce sort of new rubric for, scouting these guys and getting more information on them. Maybe he stresses a little bit more of the culture. Maybe he stresses a little bit more, he brings a little bit of a different philosophy. But for the most part, like that's usually delegated. The GM oversees those things, but because that scope is so wide, all the way down to, hey, we need to renovate the bathrooms and the training facility. Like the general manager has to be concerned with those types of things for player retention and making sure that there's nothing that's going to deter players for sticking around or joining the franchise, that he's going to rely, I imagine, on a delegation that either is already in place or one that he recreates.
All right. So David said the real question is, will he look in the future while retaining Matt? That's any GM. Any GM is going to look into the future. You don't just be satisfied with what you have. And then he just on Matt Ryan. Right now, we know our biggest issue right now has been defense and running the ball. So that right there is going to be addressed this offseason. Go ahead, man, Mike.
As far as his philosophy, is he one of those GMs because the Falcons have had issues in particular on the defensive side of the ball, whether or not they want to be a 3-4 or 4-3 style defense. Does he favor a particular style of defense?
The only thing I could do in that, I think he'll probably, again, if that philosophy is set by the coach, by the new head coach coming in or the defensive coordinator, then he would help to support that and identify players that fit in that role. But when it comes down to what they did with the New Orleans Saints, it's a multiple front set. They'll play, 3 down linemen for dime sets on third down, but then they'll also play that in, 2-minute situations and, in up-tempo offense situations when they're going up against those. But for the most part, they'll stick around with 4 defensive linemen and try not to send a fifth on blitzing if they don't have to. So if you try to, if you want to look at what they did in New Orleans and then assume that that'll be part of the philosophy that he brings with him, that would probably be the system he'd be most familiar with. But also because of that, he's familiar in terms of what kind of talent is needed for those odd man fronts as well as those 4-man fronts.
Okay.
Do you think the Saints will be looking towards their future at quarterback in this draft?
They better be looking into the future at quarterback in every draft. Which is going to be an interesting thing, right? To see how Terry Fontenot takes that philosophy over, where the Saints haven't ever really addressed quarterback in the draft, right? Yeah. That's not something that they've really put a focus on. I believe it's 2 quarterbacks that have been drafted in the in Sean Payton's tenure since
Chase
everything
Daniels,
changed over in 2006.
Chase Daniels and Taysom Hill. That's it. Chase Daniels and Taysom Hill.
Yeah, and I mean, and those guys weren't even drafted. Like those guys came in as free agents. You know what I mean? So that was like a part of Terry Fontenot, right? Especially, Taysom Hill was entirely Sean Payton, but Terry Fontenot played a role in retention and things like that with him. But when it comes down to maybe a philosophy that he brings with him, is he somebody that says, hey, we never did this in New Orleans. We should look at addressing quarterback and looking and just having a future quarterback that we look at in drafts more often than not. Like maybe they do put an extra focus on that because they didn't in New Orleans. It depends on how he feels about that philosophy going in.
All right. Dwayne,
he said something key. You say that Taysom Hill wasn't totally Sean Payton's.
No. I said Taysom Hill was entirely Sean Payton because Sean Payton went to go and scout somebody else. He went to go scout a receiver at a Green Bay game. I believe it was a preseason game, if I remember correctly. And then he saw Taysom Hill play, and he was like, that guy. And then he really pushed for Taysom Hill to be there. But Terry Fontenot, of course, played a role in retaining him when it came to dealing with the new contract, his expiring stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, Dwayne said, I think the best thing for him to do is come in right out the gate, trade for the second pick. What second pick are you talking about? The second overall pick?
If you're talking about for the New York Jets, then that's somebody that's interested in addressing quarterback, it sounds like.
Why are we moving up 2 spots?
We're giving away capital. We barely have money as it is.
We got so many holes and stuff on the defense and everything. Why are we giving away capital that we need? And now he said get his franchise QB, then see who really think will be.
We learn anything from the Saints. The Saints are a perfect example of really just extending one's career. Like this is a perfect example. Why are we so quick to draft a quarterback and you have a great quarterback in Drew Brees and Matt Ryan? Have a guy like Taysom Hill who can be a mobile quarterback, who can do some things outside of just being that, and wait a couple of years. When Drew Brees retired, when Matt Ryan says that he wants to retire, that's when you start the draft process. But like this is a perfect opportunity. You saw it with the Saints. They just focus on building their defense, and look where they're at right now.
Defense and offensive line, like those are the two. And that's what you want for an aging quarterback: a better defense, a better offensive line to keep them clean.
And that's what y'all did. Y'all went 7-9 for 3 years straight.
Yep.
Y'all could have easily drafted Deshaun Watson in 2017 because I thought that's the direction that y'all was gonna go.
Me too.
But y'all didn't. Y'all got Marshawn Lattimore, and then y'all went back in the first round and got Ramczak.
Yep.
Which has been a huge piece of y'all offensive line.
Huge.
And then ever since then, y'all been NFC South champions because y'all got a top 10 defense and y'all got one of the best line in football. That's what we've been trying to tell the Falcons fans. Like, if we just build our offensive line and you get a defense, we'll be good.
Right.
That's
the skill possession weapons are there. There's no doubt about that. And you have a quarterback that obviously knows the system. I mean, the system was built around Matt Ryan, was built with Matt Ryan for that matter. Yeah, I see it similarly to you guys. I don't see anything wrong with if you're sitting at 4 and a quarterback that this team really, really likes is on the board, and then they take that quarterback. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think moving up and then giving up capital to go and grab a quarterback that you might like, a little bit of a different story. But if somebody's there at 4 and they're like, let's just stockpile Zach Wilson, for instance, or let's stockpile, X, Y, and Z, whatever this quarterback is. I get that idea, but moving up probably not the solution.
Exactly. All right, Kingsbury said, what flaws do you see him as a GM?
I think that the biggest thing is going to be the inexperience for the other parts of the job. I keep using the phrase, but widening the scope, right? He's been focusing on pro personnel for most of his career with the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, he's been learning from other people. He's been working closely with Jeff Ireland because he's part of that sort of triumvirate, him, Jeff Ireland, Mickey Loomis. So obviously he's learning from those guys. So he has experience and exposure to those other roles. But that would be my biggest question mark of him, would be, can he expand a little bit in terms of like what his focus is outside of pro personnel, what he's been doing for the New Orleans Saints.
All right. David said, what role did Joe Brady? Joe Brady was an offensive assistant.
Yeah, Joe Brady. You want me to be 100% real?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe Brady made copies. Joe Brady made copies. Like Joe Brady was. That's what Joe Brady did. That's what Joe Brady did in New Orleans. Like I'm not trying to disparage him. But like in New Orleans,
up that Xerox in the playbook.
Right. Like that was his role in New Orleans, because he started off very young, right? Like I'm not trying to disparage him at all. And then he did a really good job beyond that, like picking up what Sean Payton was doing with his system and everything. Then he went to LSU and then got more exposure there in terms of his ability as a passing game coordinator, where he mostly focused working not with the quarterbacks, but with the wide receivers, which is very important. And then he was able to develop his own system from there. But when he was with New Orleans, he just did a very good job soaking up information, being a sponge and being proactive while being the guy that made copies. I mean, it's an incredible story what he's done so far.
All right, so let me ask you, get your take real quick, because everybody's saying that Terry Fontenot and Joe Brady, they may be combined as a GM head coach. Brady, I'll be all right with it. But my thing is, he's still, to me, he's not proven yet. Right. Just like Sean McVay was or whatever, but at least McVay coached in the NFL a little longer, as an OC. Yeah. But who would you pick as a head coach? Would you pick Joe Brady or would it be Arthur Smith? Because we interviewed Arthur Smith twice already. Yeah,
I mean, I'm gonna be 100% real with you. My best pick for Atlanta, and the guy that I've wanted to see be the head coach for Atlanta in this coaching cycle, was Eric Bieniemy. That's the guy that I've been very excited about for New Orleans.
Why?
Because simply. No, the only reason why I said that is because like the system is perfect for what he likes to do. Wide zone offense, bring something in. Arthur Smith is the same thing. Arthur Smith is going to bring a wide zone focus. He's going to bring that sort of college feeling system to it. So Arthur Smith's not a bad choice, but Eric Bieniemy was somebody that I really looked at and was like, he would be a really good fit in terms of being somebody that can work with Matt Ryan, being somebody that can work with these receivers and then maximize tight end presence, things like that. So he would just get a little bit more from the skill position players on offense than I think maybe Matt Smith will. Matt Smith is going to maximize the quarterback. To me, Eric Bieniemy maximizes all of the skill position players. It's just a style thing. It's just a fit thing. That's all that it was. Yeah. But out of the two, I personally lean towards Arthur Smith. Out of Joe Brady and Arthur Smith, I lean Arthur Smith. More experience, more exposure, things like that. Joe Brady's ascension has been awesome. It's been incredible to watch, but he's got 1 year of experience as a coordinator in the NFL, and you're trying to work off of that. And I know that people are looking at like the 2009 LSU offense and saying, look, this was the best college football team at that time or whatever, like throughout that season. Some people look at it as the best college football team of all time. But when you look at it, it comes down to him working very closely with Steve Insminger, who was doing all of the offensive coordination, who was doing all of the install. He worked mostly as a passing game coordinator with the wide receivers. So you can only take so much from that, right? It's like saying, oh, it's a co-coordinator position, for lack of better phrases. So I think that would be my thing, would be leaning toward Arthur Smith as a more proven guy in the NFL, especially when you already have a first-time GM. Pairing that with a first-time head coach can be a little volatile.
Okay. All right. I've just never been high on Airbnb, man.
That's fine.
He's not calling the plays out there, and I don't think we're going to end up hiring him. I think it's going to come down to either it's going to be Brady, Arthur Smith, and we don't know about Brandon Staley. He may end up following Brad Holmes out there in Detroit right now.
Yeah, which would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, David, man. Appreciate you.
We definitely appreciate it.
But here's the thing. All right, Terry Fontenot pretty much going to end up being hired as the Atlanta Falcons GM. Hopefully by the end of the day or next week, but not next week, tomorrow. But it won't be official till after you guys, I guess, lose this weekend.
Yeah, Monday.
But yeah, but like, do you think him coming here is the best fit, or do you think him going to a different team will maximize him?
I think going to Atlanta makes a ton of sense for him. It's a team that he's familiar with because he's had to build a team. He's had to build a team that had to compete against him twice a season every year that he has been with the New Orleans Saints system, right? The expansion was at 2002 for the NFC South. And then so even after, and then he came on after that. And so for 16 years, he has been a part of a franchise that has been focused on building a team that's had to go up against this team twice a season. So with that, I think this is a great opportunity for him because he's familiar. He knows what they want to do. He knows how to go against it as well, which I think can be equally of value. I think this is a better fit for him than maybe some of the other positions that are open, especially as a first-time guy.
Yeah, I know I heard some people on Twitter say, well, hire him, he's going to be like a spy. And he gonna get the Saints. I'm like, we haven't been good for the past few years. What is he gonna be y'all? Like,
yeah. I think the thing is that yes, he's gonna bring some knowledge of the system with him, but the focus is gonna be on maximizing the talent that's already there and then building the team before essentially being more concerned about what another franchise is doing. It's going to be insular. It's going to be how do we revolutionize or change what is happening here within the Atlanta Falcons and make this product better, as opposed to focusing on what the other team is doing. You always build, divisional teams are built to win the division. So you always build your team to compete against the teams in the division. So there's always going to be some value in having that knowledge.
It's an arms race.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's an arms race.
Exactly. So if you get caught up on what they're doing over there, you're missing what you need to be doing right here, which is what I think he'll be focused on.
All right. Any more questions, Matt, Mike?
I think he pretty much explained all. I had one major. I think you pretty much got it all. Outside of that, yeah, I'm cool.
Cool,
man. I just appreciate it. I appreciate it, man. I definitely enjoyed the show. You gave us pretty much everything that we needed to know about Terry Fontenot. That's something that we've under Thomas Dimitroff. If you pay the attention to the Falcons, Thomas Dimitroff has been horrible with retaining players and the type of players that you need to either retain or decide to let go. So I think this is an excellent hire, man, to be honest. So I appreciate it.
For example,
of course.
For example, Justin Zimmer. We brought in Justin Zimmer a couple of seasons ago. Let this man go. This man up in Buffalo balling. I'm like,
I mean, it's that kind of thing, right? You have to have the sort of foresight aspect of everything. What does a player look like right now? But also, what can he look like very soon in this system? And everything has to be under, and I think it goes without saying, but everything has to be under the scope of what the system and philosophy is for the individual franchise, right? So, somebody works somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean that they would have worked where you are, but are you able to do that? The thing that the New Orleans Saints have done very well and that they've talked about very publicly is that no player ever shows up in New Orleans unless there is a specific plan for how they fit. It's not like the New England Patriots to where like wide receiver 3 has a binder and that's what that role is always doing in the system. It's more so how do we maximize these players within our system? And so not ours, I don't work for the team, but you know what I mean, within the New Orleans Saints system. And so it comes down to that. And I think Terry Fontenot will bring that philosophy. Again, I think it's a great hire. I think it's a really, really good opportunity for Terry Fontenot. I'm very glad to see him get it. Like to see a brother in that role as well as a general manager, like that's incredibly important. And I'm so glad to see that for him. I think that the question marks are only how does he adjust to the things that he hasn't had to be, a huge part of, that he's played a role in and that he's been around him. That's going to be the thing to watch. How does he operate in the draft? How does he operate as the general manager when it comes to focusing on contract negotiations, wider aspect of player retention, staff retention, things like that? Like it just widens the scope for him. So the only question mark is going to be, yes, he does some of the things that maybe Dimitroff didn't do as well, but then can he balance it back out to hit a wider scope of things? That will be the big question.
All right, Reggie, I understand what y'all saying about Arthur Smith. I know the run game got shut down by Baltimore, but guys, look, it happens, y'all. It's football. You know, like this doesn't mean y'all looking at one game and y'all saying that, oh, this man ain't gonna be a good coach.
Yeah. I would also stress too that, like, no offense, but Atlanta, no team in the NFL aside from Tennessee has a Derrick Henry. Exactly. And so no team is going to be as focused on building around their running back to the extent that, you know, their entire offense is predicated on if Derrick Henry is running, then the passing game can work. And I don't think Atlanta has that problem. The passing game is always going to work for Atlanta.
But
now
even still,
what else he brings.
But even still, Tannehill is looking real good in Tennessee.
Yes.
You know, his numbers is matching Pat Mahomes the past 24 games. So if you matching Pat Mahomes, you got to be doing something right.
100%. And all I'm saying is that, like, Tannehill is boosted by the presence of, like, play action and the way that all of that works, which is all a part of Arthur Miller's system. Matt Ryan doesn't necessarily need that to be productive. And I think that's a benefit for Atlanta. If you get a guy like Arthur Smith who can implant that, but also has a quarterback that can take over a game and that can win you a game, which I don't know that Ryan Tannehill can do, as we've seen if the running game gets taken out. Matt Ryan doesn't have that problem. And I think that helps Arthur Smith.
All right. Mm-hmm. All right, Rose said, but can Terry bring in people to help with what he's lacking? Yeah, he'll do that. You know, you got to if you want to be successful as a GM, you got to bring in people who's going to help you. You can't just be bringing in your cousin down the street, you know, that y'all play, you know, throw them, eat them up. You got to bring in somebody who knows their stuff,
right?
You know? So once again,
another aspect of a lot of people, they don't know that each organization has their own scouting department to begin with. So he's going to bring in guys that are asset to him, where he can, you know, feel his and he kind of take over for what the Falcons are, you know, what they want of him. They're asking of him. So that's important for a lot of people to know. A lot of people just think, okay, the GM is the guy that's going to, you know, handle the draft and free agency. There are, like I said, every team has their scouting department.
Right. It'll be his job to essentially, like, take all of them and then create a cohesive and consistent focus. That's going to be basically his biggest thing. Because I know that there's also already, I'm just looking at the executive branch for the Falcons, but when it comes down to, like, pro and draft personnel, like, there's already people in those positions. Shepley Hurd as the director of pro personnel, Anthony Robinson, the director of college scouting. So if those two are retained and are not replaced by, somebody that maybe Fontenot feels more comfortable with, which is entirely possible, but his job will be to take all of those different perspectives and then turn it toward the team philosophy to make sure everything is consistent. So if there's been anywhere that you're seeing that they're lacking in that consistency, he becomes sort of the driving force behind making it consistent.
I think we keep Anthony Robinson. I don't think he's going anywhere.
That would be smart.
Yeah, Cortez said, "Do you think this hire will bring the fan base back together? Because it's been a man. Look, let me tell y'all something. Two things is what's wrong with this franchise. The first thing is when we drafted Vic, everybody lost their doggone minds. Everybody think that every quarterback after Vic should be just like this man. This is why we keep getting the Justin Fields." Even people up here capping for doggone Dwayne Haskins to come to Atlanta. Like, come on now. Y'all just stop it.
Hey, what's the quarterback for we signed? I forget his name. The quarterback from the Patriots at the Falcons side. He was mobile quarterback.
Yeah, Danny Italy.
We brought him in. We wanted him to be the starter. We wanted a running quarterback so bad. Like, this is what Falcons fans are. So there's no hope for us.
Man, we wanted Dominique Franks to be the quarterback. Like,
oh my God.
And the second thing is us losing that 2016 Super Bowl. Because after that Super Bowl, we thought we was the team to beat. And we didn't even win anything. So I don't know, man. I don't know if this fan base could ever be on the united front, because everybody wants such and such, everybody wants flash. You got people like us who knows what we need to be successful, but you know, people are not about that life. You know, they're not about drafting a PDC well to help your offensive line get better. Y'all want Justin Fields. for some reason. I don't know why. So hey, it is what it is. But once again, man, appreciate you coming on, man. Once again, let everybody know who you are and where they can find you at again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out. Because again, I'm a big fan of Terry Fontenot, so I'm excited to see him get this opportunity. If y'all are interested, you can follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. If you don't follow me, it's okay. I understand. I cover the Saints. You probably hate that. I don't mind. It's fine. But I'm just going to tell you, Ross Jackson Nola, and you can catch the podcast every day, Monday through Friday, over at Locked On Saints, and as well as all the write-ups over at Canal Street Chronicles. Again, if you don't check it out, it's okay. I understand. I'm not mad at you, but I appreciate y'all so much, man. Thanks for having me.
Y'all need to go follow them, man. Y'all need look. I understand some people Falcons fans. I support anybody.
I need an insider. We need insiders, so I'm definitely going to follow.
I appreciate y'all. I am not an incendiary person. That's not who I am.
Yeah, as long as you ain't TJ Jones, I'm cool with TJ Jones. He all right.
TJ's dope.
Yeah, he could clown, but still at the same time. But I'm gonna support brothers anyway, because we do need to support each other. People need to understand that.
Absolutely.
Yep. So 100%. I appreciate y'all, man. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So all right. Hey, if anybody watching this at a later time, please let us know in the comment section. Do you think Terry Fontenot would be a good GM for us, or do you think, oh man, we need Louis Riddick? Whatever the case, man, whatever comment you want, just swing it our way. All right. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this content out with Atlanta Sports Fanatics. As always, come holler at your hometown sports podcast. It's your boy The Dunn. He'll my partner in crime, Mad Mike from Mad Mike Sports. Y'all have a great afternoon, and we'll see y'all later on tonight with the Kings Rim and the Dunn's Favor covering the playoff games for this weekend. Today, y'all stay safe.
Peace. 5K.